Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm a
I've
little
had
relieved
to,
that they're allowing all employees' kids to go on A day and B day. So that's going to relieve a lot of people. I'm pleased with that
yeah,
decision.
Mr. Hutt said something about that today, about an A day, B day, and that they'll allow their children to go in. But of course, some were still concerned.
Well, I'll shoot you an email so we don't hijack this Zoom anymore. Sorry,
Okay.
everybody.
Hey, how's everybody?
Great.
Good? Oh, good.
Great.
Wonderful.
Good. See, we've got some faculty members with us tonight. I see Dr. Todd, Dr. Stone. Dr. Stedman, are you on here yet?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Now remember, you are the alternative host. So when I get knocked offline by this big thunderstorm, that's
Well,
it.
we're waiting on one as well. So
Yeah, I think everybody is tonight. I'm just 3 hours further west than you are, so it'll hit me first. But hopefully I've got my battery charged up on my laptop. I don't know if I've got my phone where I can switch over to the internet from my phone.
yeah, you're
So-
recording. You're recording on your end, right?
I am recording.
Okay. So I just got through with my class. I had a short class with them so I could bring closure to things before
All right.
they came on
Well,
board.
I've invited all the 605s, regular and add-on, and I've also invited our 603 add-ons as well, since many of them are applying for jobs, and some of them will not be with us in the fall, since some of them are going to accelerate into the doctoral program. And so we've got a number of those who are going to do that. And I see Sean, again, congratulations to Sean Bach. Sean just got the job at Cottle Creek, and Sean's going to be a guest presenter tonight because he just went through this process in the last few days. And I got feedback today. Let me see if I'll do that. Okay, I'm sorry, I should have already done that. So Sean went through this process in the last few weeks, and I heard independently today what a great job he did interviewing. He out-interviewed sitting assistant principals, and so we're going to let him. He sent me a Google Doc, and we've made a quick Word document of it. We're going to let him go through that quickly tonight. But before we start interviewing, I want to cover some things on licensure. So let me share my screen and we'll get started with those, because the whole point of getting in this program, of course, was to get a license so that you can practice. So let me see, let me move this out of the way and get to my documents here. All right, so just to review what it takes to get a license, for those of you in the regular master's program, 36 credit hours, which is 30 credit hours of coursework, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5, MELS 1 through 5, 601 through 605, and 6 credit hours of clinical internship. You should have had 4 697s for 1 credit hour each this summer. You should be in 696 with 2 credit hours for a total of 36 hours. Okay, I'm typing. Thank you, Dr. Todd, for reminding me of that. And we'll get to that later. All right, and then so what you're going to need to get your license, you'll need an official transcript. It takes about 2 weeks, a week to 2 weeks after the session is over on August 1st to get that. But you're going to need that. You're going to need your completed task stream portfolio, and remember, that's a minimum of 3.0 score on all 6 evidences, a met on all competency analysis, dispositions, a met on your competency folio, which required 3 rounds of 21 artifacts, and 5 semester internship logs of 80 hours each. Remember, North Carolina candidates, there is no exam to get your North Carolina license. South Carolina candidates, you will go through the North Carolina process and then apply for your reciprocal license. When you do that, you will have to take the Praxis 5412. We've had a 100% pass rate on that, so you should be prepared. And again, to continue to get your North Carolina license, you complete Form V. And then there's a verification form when you do reciprocal with South Carolina that has to be filled out. If you complete your coursework but don't finish your portfolio next week, I can't extend you past August 1st. I've already checked. If you're not done by then, you'll have to be registered for $6.99 in the fall. So make sure you get that you get your tax stream portfolio completed. For those of you who are in the add-on program, you got 24 credit hours, 18 hours. You got MELS 601, 3, and 5, and you should have had 3 698s for 2 hours each, and the same conditions apply for you. We have some of you who are in a couple of other iterations. Those of you who are in 603 with me tonight that are going to go into the doctoral program in the fall, you will skip 605 and you will substitute 730. That will be on your transcript in December when you apply on time for your licensure. Remember, even though you might have completed the requirements of 605 this summer, you have to be an intern for a year before you can apply for your license. So all of you 603s accelerating into 730 this fall, you will still get your license on time in December. We'll just substitute 730 for 605. Now, we've got some EDCI doctorals like Ingrid. If you're in that traditional program, you take 601, 603. You won't take 605 this fall, but you will take 698 and you'll get your license on time in December. I don't think we have any of the other EDCI folks who are doing the block. I've not invited them to be with us tonight because they don't do their block until this fall. So now that's kind of the notion here on all of these. I will send this out later so that you can get this and so that you have it. But here's the even better news. We now have a full-time licensure officer again. Her name is Miss Wendy Turbyfield. Many of you know Wendy's been with us for a while in a different capacity, and she does a great job. And so she sent you an email yesterday, and here it is about if you have questions and the process, and she'll be your person that helps you with everything related to your licensure. So if you send me an email, I'll just forward it to her. Now, Dr. Bull and I have been doing licensure since March. I had a full head of hair when I started licensure, and you can see what it's done to me. So I'm excited that Ms. Turbyfield is up and going as our new licensure officer. And so there's her email and there's her phone number. You can call her. She is an on the ball, on time, get back to you immediately kind of person. And that's what you have to have in licensure. So she will be your person. She sent you an email yesterday. This is a copy of that email. I will attach it to tonight's link as well. So don't disregard these licensure issues. Make sure you follow through and get your license. And so, because you're going to need that license to practice, and many of you want to get jobs soon, and there's a lot of demand for you out there because of your virtual skills and collaborating and working online and experience with online platforms. And so always strike when the iron is hot. And now it's hot for folks like you who come through a program like this. Don't sleep on your licensure. I also wanted to be reminded that Sean Perry recently went through this and got an assistant principal position in Hope County. Congratulations to Sean. And so if Sean is with us tonight, we'll hear from Sean as well. A question came in, do we send, no, you follow the process. We take care of the portfolio piece. You just have to do the form. And so Anthony, oh, that's Dwayne, said that he was part of the interview for Sean, so that's great. Remember, we take care of that piece. Follow the directions that have. You've got to round up you've got to apply and get your transcript, and you've got to fill out the Form V. There's nothing on this about task stream. I take care of task stream. I still have to do that part. All program coordinators take care of the task stream. That will be done for you. So don't worry about task stream. Just get it done. So when I go in to get it, it's completed. It won't let me move it until it's complete. So don't worry about task stream. I take care of task stream. All right. So tonight I want to kick off our interviewing session. We're right on time. Let me close that one out. And I want to start with the 4 types of interviews. Now, these will vary a little bit in terms of there might be a change in the order. I got off the phone with one of our previous graduates a few minutes ago. His first interview was with the principal because of the time constraints this summer. She needed to have some people by today. And so, but she didn't do the principal interview with him. She conducted the Strength Finder interview with him. She had him do that Strength Finder assessment. And so that's normally done as the first interview. It was his first interview, but it was not done by somebody in HR as it normally is. It was done by the principal in order to speed the process. She did that and the principal interview at the same time. And then today they did the group interview. So the order of these may vary some, especially in these times that we're in right now. So she did the applicant interview 2.0 and the principal's interview together. And then out of sequence, which should have been in between, they're doing that. They started the group interview today, and then it will go to their area superintendent later this week. They're fast tracking it though. Because they had an unexpected person to leave unexpectedly, and they're trying to get back on track. So don't hold me to this specific order. Just understand that these are the things that are going to happen to you. So the first round of interviews is usually an applicant pool interview. The reason why we have you use Strength Finder 2.0, which is part of the Gallup organization, is that has been the industry standard for more than 25 years. I am a Gallup perceiver. I went through that training when I was a high school principal, year-long training with the Gallup. It seeks to find people who have the appropriate skill set, leadership qualities, dispositional behaviors to be a principal. What we use is Strength Finder 2.0. Now, most people have gotten away from the notebooks that had the 60 Gallup questions in them. They just had you do that assessment yourself. Sometimes it's online, sometimes they give you the form. We used to read the questions to the applicants. We don't read them anymore. But they ask you dispositional things. They'll ask you, are you always on time? Yes, I'm always on time. Are you competitive? Yes, I'm competitive. Do you follow the law always? Yes, I always follow the law. Those kinds of things, you're responsible, you're hardworking. They attempt to look at your soft skills. That's what they're looking for, is your dispositional behaviors. One of the documents that you should have is this document. This is what we commonly refer to now as emotional intelligence. Work ethic. positive attitude, communication skills, time management, self-confidence. You know that we run schools on the clock. You know, if you tell somebody, I was principal at Early Start High School. I had 6 APs. I was interviewing for a new assistant principal, and one of them told me when I said, you know, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Told me, well, I'm not really an on-time person. What? Well, I don't really like mornings. Well, I can't use you at Early Start High School that we start at 6 o'clock every morning and get out at 2:15. I can't use you. Now, he might have been a great person, but that's the kind of thing that we're talking about. Time management, on time, those kinds of things. Now, sometime during this process, somebody's going to ask you a landmine question, which is, are you, excuse me, are you an on-time person? And the answer better be yes, regardless of whether you are or not. You better say, yes, I am an on-time person. Because we can't use people who aren't an on-time person. You're going to get asked the landmine question about, do you always follow law and policy? And those of you who had me in 603, you know I beat you mercilessly for the whole semester about you must follow the law always. Even if it looks good, just like our case study on the superintendent, the 3rd case study about the money. It might be a good idea, but it's against the law, don't do it. So those are the kinds of things. And so when you get asked, you know, the landmine question of what are your strengths and weaknesses, your strengths must always be dispositional, emotional intelligence. I'm honest. I'm self-reliant. I'm ethical. I'm a hard worker. I show up on time. I'm always prepared. That's who you are as a person. That's not going to change. And when they ask you what your weaknesses are, your answer must always be inexperience, nothing else. Don't go off the reservation here. Don't ad-lib this. Your strengths are always dispositional. Those won't change. That means you're a fully formed adult. Your weaknesses are always inexperience because guess what? You can fix that. You can't fix stupid. You can't fix late or tardy or unethical. You can't fix that. But you can fix inexperience by giving me a shot at this job, and I'll show you. So the answer to your strengths and weaknesses are, my strengths are my dispositional or emotional intelligence behaviors, and my weaknesses are inexperience. But I know what those are. I know that, for example, Power School has an administrative portal that's much more involved than the teacher portal, and I will go and learn that immediately. I know that the evaluation system, I must be certified to do evaluations and learn how to load them in that system. I'll do that immediately. That you will do all the things that you need to so that you can pull your weight as an administrative team member, that you will do that immediately. Don't think, as my position coach used to say to me, we didn't pay you to use your head. We want you to stick it in the tight end's ribs when he comes across the middle. That's what you want. So don't ad-lib. Don't try to make it up. Your strengths are always dispositional. Your weaknesses are always inexperienced. Always. And that will get you through that landmine question. You're always on time. You're always ethical. Those kinds of things, they're absolutes. Any answers that you miss on that will knock you out before you even get started. We don't need dumb or unethical people. We can use people who don't have experience, because many times that's preferable over people who do, because we can train you as principals. We can train our APs to do the things the way that we want them done. So inexperience is not really a bad thing, as long as you know that you're inexperienced and you know that you need to work on getting those technical things squared away quickly so that you can become a fully fledged team member. All right. Yeah. Dr. Crawford said, sadly, stupid is too often promoted. That is true. That's a true statement. The problem is we don't find out you're stupid until after we've hired you. If we know you're stupid before we hire you, we don't hire you. And so that's the whole idea. Let that be your secret. Everybody doesn't have to know that. Let that be your secret. All right, so these are what we're talking about that they will try to suss out from you in the first level interview, in the cattle call interview. They're going to try to find out what kind of person you are. So make sure you study this one. All right. So Strength Finder, that's again your style. Gallup, that's part of it. Now they may do a reasoning activity with you. We've got one of those. Let's see. This one, where they'll give you scenarios that you have to work through. And they'll have you rank them in importance, or what would you do first, or how would you handle this. Now, this is the old school one from years ago when you can see how old this one is. The principal was 2 weeks showing up and he had like 20 emails. I get that before 5 o'clock in the morning. I average 110 a day. And so you can tell, if you only got 21 emails in 2 weeks, that this might be an old one. But the whole point of it is this. There's some things in here that are landmines. Let's see. Let me catch the one here. You're a new principal and somebody from the media calls you and would like to do a feature on you as a new principal and wants to come to your school and interview you and maybe talk to your teachers and students. What would your answer be? And your answer would be, I wouldn't respond. I'd just forward this one on to Public Information Office. Principals aren't allowed to speak, or APs aren't allowed to speak to the media without approval from the Public Information Office. And we dare not, because the FERPA rules put a child face on a video on TV, you'll get fired over that. You should know that this is not urgent, but that you should forward this on to the Public Information Office. That kind of thing. I know you know those kinds of things in most of these. Now, here's the trick on one like this. Once you work through all these scenarios, they have you. This is what Dr. Crawford was referring to a while ago. Too many times we hire stupid people and don't know it. So now we do more little tricks like this to find out if you're stupid up front. So you have to take all those emails and put them in one of these 4 quadrants. Urgent and important. Was the email not urgent, but it was important? Was it urgent, but it wasn't important? And then not urgent, not important. Not urgent, not important would be things like spam emails and things like that. Now, if you put any of the 21 emails in quadrant number 3, you have proven yourself to be a stupid person, and we don't have to bother with you anymore. We will excuse you from the process. There's nothing that could be urgent, but it's not important. If it's urgent, that means it is important. And so that's a simple IQ check to make sure that we don't hire stupid people. That usually comes with the in-basket activity. How would you handle these scenarios? But then they would have one like this. Is it urgent but not important? No such thing exists in the world. And so if you put one in that quadrant, well, then we're done with you. A lot of times they'll have some kind of a little basic IQ or reasoning test like this in those early rounds of the applicant pool process when they're trying to sort people out. And so if you miss this one, then we don't have to worry about you from there on out. So this is another one of those applicant pool things that you have to work your way through. All right. Let me close that one. The next one is virtual interviews. A lot of districts now obviously are doing virtual interviews. They didn't do that before March with COVID, but now they're doing virtual. And so I have a document in here of the kind of things that you're usually asked. Sean also has, I'm gonna call on him here just in a minute, because many of the things that he experienced, you experience in a virtual interview. I don't know how he did his, whether he did it face-to-face or virtually, but here's virtual interviews. And again, there's always a landmine question in the virtual interview. This particular one in Charlotte, this is the one they use in Charlotte. If there was a system policy that you didn't agree with and you didn't think was in the best interest of your students or school, what would you do? I would follow the policy. That's the one they use in Charlotte. Now, here's a trick for virtual interviews. They're going to look for eye contact, just like now. You notice I have finally learned that that when I speak to you, as painful as it is, I have to look at myself and do that. So that means it looks like I'm looking at you. You know, y'all don't realize how much I sacrifice for you. So I have to sit here and stare at myself for an hour. But if you don't, say, for example, if I look down at Sharice, it looks like I'm asleep because I've moved my head and my eye contact down. You got to be careful not to turn your head and read from notes or whatever. You got to look at yourself. And so the trick is, around the borders of your screen, take sticky notes. This is how I cheat. See sticky notes right here? And you turn them upside down and do the first row across the top and do it like you read. And then take your sticky notes and put them across your screen and then turn them to the right and go down the right-hand side and then around the bottom and up to the left. Learn to read that just like you read now. And it will never appear that you've taken your eyes off the screen. Because one of the biggest things they're looking for when you do virtual interviews is can you project and maintain contact with the screen during the entire time. They're trying to see if your personality shines through. You know, one of the things that I have found as program coordinator for the last few years, I can hire people to teach who were great teachers face to face, but not so much online. And I have to actually work with them. This is something that we do. We have to work with them on developing their skills to do online presentations. It's not a natural thing to do to sit and stare at yourself. Some people better looking than me, it's not as hard, but for me, it's not a natural thing to do. Well, that's part of what's going to happen, when you do virtual interviews. You need to be able to understand. They're going to ask you scenario questions and those things, and they're looking, can you converse back with them? All right. In order to give you and me a quick break, I'm going to pull up, as I said, congratulations to both Seans. But let's see. I'm going to pull this one up now. This is much like the virtual interview that I have in our packet. And I'm going to call on Sean now. Again, congratulations to Sean. And he's going to work you through quickly the process that he went through this summer interviewing for his new job. Sean, if you're there.
Yeah, I'm here. So this is a list that I compiled. I went on about 5 interviews. 4 of those interviews were online interviews, and 1 of those interviews were in person. And I will say the interview in person was 6 feet apart from everyone. So I almost felt like I was yelling at that interview because they're so far away from you. But what I did, again, I'm not an expert, and I said this in my last class that I was in, but I want to provide at least some sort of insight into what, I experienced to provide you guys with the potential to have a job. And so what I did was, after every interview I went on, I thought about what I was asked, and I wrote those questions down. And then I thought about what I said. And then I said to myself, did I really say the way that I wanted to say it? Did I say enough? Did I dive in deep enough into that question? And I felt like I didn't. And after every single interview I went on, I tried to get better and better and better. And this first question here, where it says, can you provide information about your history? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I got that question 5 times on all the 5 interviews I went on. And so I felt like every time I went on that interview, and I got in the next interview and the next interview, I got better at that question. And I guarantee you they're going to ask you about that question. What is your why? What do you feel like you can bring to the table? What do you feel like you envision the role of this job to be? And, it's important to speak about who you are. But I struggled with, I don't want to bore them to death with a 3-minute talk, but I also don't want to go for 30 seconds either and make it a 5-minute interview. So you have to kind of wiggle, that room in there. But I wanted to provide, the people here tonight with this list. And, the things that I did, especially virtually, was I took the questions I was asked, and might sound, so crazy and so weird, but I recorded myself. Like right now, I'm moving my hands a lot. That might distract some people. I looked at where my eyes were. I recorded how I sounded. I even thought about how I said things and even how I presented myself. Do I present myself in a happy-go-lucky, I'm so happy to be here? Does that scare them off? Or do I be more shy and reserved where they know I'm professional? And it's kind of that mix that I felt like I had to find a little bit. And Dr. Lamb was right. Like, you're going to get a curveball question. They are definitely 100% going to throw that at you. And you have to take that information, process it, but be able to give them, the correct answer back. And that's not easy to do, and it does take practice. You're going to say, after your first interview, that went okay, but I learned a lot about what I should say, and I think it's important to be reflective. And so this was essentially 5 interviews that I went on compiled together to make myself feel like I got better and better and better and better. One of the things I talked about in my 605 class at 6 was when you speak, you got to know who you're speaking to. And so I'll say that when you have a committee, and you're going to have a committee, I had about between 7 to 11 people on each interview I went on. You're going to want to make it personal, and you're going to want to talk to the school data, but you never want to say, well, you guys are a B school, and this is what I think I can do. Because that makes them sound like the teachers don't know what they're doing. If your teachers are on the panel, they're going to be done with you. And I'm going to tell you right now, they will disconnect from you and just stop listening. And it happens. You don't realize, I guess, what you say until you say it. So I suggest that you practice that. So as an example, and I said this before, but let's say you're looking at a B school. Tell them how incredible those teachers are, how hard that they're working, and then what you can bring to the table to make them that much better. Not to ever say, well, I see data and it looks like you guys are bad at reading. I'm looking at 6th grade math and it's horrible. And you don't think that you're saying it that way, but you can really hurt someone's feelings without even knowing it. So it's important to kind of realize what you're saying, and say it in the right way. But some of the things that I did is I never talked about just teachers. I talked about front office staff. I talked about TAs. I talked about bus drivers. I talked about custodians. I talked about all those areas. And they might not ask you that, but I think it's important for you to know your role, right? You're going to be over TAs. You're going to be over bus drivers. But is that just your job? And the answer is no. Right? Your job is about impact. Right? Your job is about how can you support teachers and advocate for them and then help support the students. And you have to find a way in all of these questions, and it's so incredibly hard to put all of that logistics into a 30-minute conversation. And again, that's really, really a struggle. And I suggest to you what Dr. Lamb said, really put those sticky notes around there, really see how you look. I've seen people on, Zoom interviews like this, and I can't see them. Think about like where you're looking. It's so hard in a Zoom interview because you have to look at the camera. You want to be able to look people in the eye, but you also want to look at their screen to see how they're doing, right? You want to see head nods. You don't want to see people like bored all day and you don't know what to do. And so, one of the things that I felt like went miles and miles, and I know I'm talking a lot, so I apologize.
Fine.
Is you want to speak to think about how you are as a teacher. How do you want an admin to act, right? Do you want them to have an open door policy? Yes. Do you want them to live in their office? No. Do you want them to be in the hallways? Yes. In classrooms? Yes. Engaging with kids? Yes. Pulling small groups? Yes. Then say that. That's what they want to hear. They want to know that you're not going to live behind your computer desk, right? They want to know that you're going to do everything you can in your power to advocate for teachers, advocate for staff, advocate for students, and help them in any aspect. And especially in the pandemic, these teachers, and you know as well as I know, we were all stressed out, right? Whether you were on plan B or plan C, or if you're in South Carolina, I don't know what you're doing. So it's one of those hard things to do. Like we're Plan B, and it's a logistical nightmare. It really is. But I will tell you, I've learned so much in the past week and a half than I think I would learn if we weren't in a pandemic. Because right now, in the summer months, typically you do 4 10-hour days, and I wouldn't have anything to do as an administrator. But in a pandemic, we've done parent meetings, we've done grade level meetings, I've contacted TAs, I've talked to custodial staff, talked to see what Plan B was, been on district meetings. I respond to emails all day. Like Dr. Lamb said, about 100 emails. I get about really 50 to 70 emails a day. That's hard. And I'm the assistant principal. I am not even the principal, so I can't even imagine, what that looks like. So, my ask to you guys is, and I'll provide this for you as well. I'm not an expert, and by no means am I an expert, but I'm offering anything that I can do to help you. I'm more than willing to. So I'm going to offer you my email, and I'll put it in the chat here because I have to go here in a second. But if any of you want advice, you want to do a one-on-one interview, I am more than willing to do that for you. And again, I don't know all the answers, but I'm willing to time you, and I'm willing to work with you to get you where you need to be.
All right, Sean, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
In terms of what Sean has brought us tonight, many of the questions that you see on the screen will be in the 3rd level principal interview. But everyone will ask you about your why. What's your experience and why are you here? Look at Sean's. I'll upload it or I'll send it to you. But look at the principal interview questions, the round 3. Most of these questions are on that one. And another thing that Sean said, if any of you have ever had the displeasure to actually be around me live, I'm a hand talker as well. And so what you don't see tonight that you would see every time that I'm online is this. I join my hands together and hold them tight down in front of me to keep myself from talking with my hands on screen. That is very distracting in interviews. Sean made a great point there. That's almost a no-no. That's almost a disqualifier for virtual interviews. So make sure, I've got a little light shining off my head because I can't help that, but make sure that you center your screen. Many of the things that he said, when you're doing these virtual interviews, put your stickies around. Don't let the light shine off your head or your face. Make sure that you're in a room where you can be seen. Learn to clasp your hands together in front of you to keep from using them to talk with. That scares people, but those kinds of gestures online are that's a no-no. But video yourself. Work with somebody. You've gotten a lot of practice doing Zooms, either case studies, collaborative, Google Docs, peer reviews. You've gotten a lot of practice. That's one of the things that, unfortunately, in 601 we had to talk to some of you about is even if we're just doing class assignments, don't be in your pajamas laying in bed. Well, when you do virtual interviews, I better be careful about that one. There's a joke in there somewhere about Victoria's Secret, but I'll pass by that. But understanding that that's the only snapshot they have of you, and you have to do that. Now, so that gets us through these. And again, Sean, thank you so much. It's very valuable. That gets us through the virtual interview. And gets us to group. Now, this is what Sean was talking about, know your audience. I set up and ran for a district for a couple of years, and now they run it on their own, a principal of the year review process. And we had a young man who came in who I'm quite sure was far and away the best candidate, but he didn't understand his audience and he insulted people, like Sean was just talking about. He would say things like PLC or EVOS, and he'd say, well, oh, y'all don't know what that means. And when he got through his interview, a local attorney who looked like the local, very pregnant mother, but she was a very high-powered attorney in the local big town about an hour away. She looked at me and said, how many times did he call me stupid? I said, I counted 6. She said, I think maybe more than that. She took offense every time he would use all the jargon that we use in the business PLCs, IRTs, M-class, DIBELS, EVOS, all those things, that the terms that we throw around all the time. If you're in a group interview that has lay people, has community members, and a lot of times you will, I don't want to say you have to dumb it down, but you have to make sure that you don't use that jargon, that you understand. And Sean made a great point. When you do an interview like that, you'll usually have a teacher or two. Don't throw them under the bus. The math scores at this school are terrible. I can fix that. And one of the teachers sitting there is the math teacher. She would die before she would recommend you for that job. So you got to know who your audience is. And so I have a PowerPoint, and let me get that one, on interviewing. And basically, here's a set of questions that looks just like the one Sean just showed you, but it shows you how that the look for is what you should say. Instead of saying my leadership style, I'm a transformational servant leader, they don't know what that means. And instead of saying I'm a transformational leader, oh, you don't know what that means. That means I inspire and motivate, lead by example. Then you explain it. Well, don't do that. Explain it first. Use these terms. Don't make them. You may know more than them. Sure, you do, but you don't have to beat them with that stick. And so, assessment drives instruction. Instead of data analysis, you explain what that means. Best practices, use of resources, engagement. You would use terms like that rather than walkthroughs. They don't know what walkthrough means. They don't know what PLC means. They'll give you some scenarios, and make sure that you explain that you don't just use single terms or anachronisms or jargon that we use inside the building. They don't know what any of that means. So the whole point of the group interview is tailoring your message to the audience that is asking you those questions. Now, sometimes in the first level interview, sometimes in conjunction with this interview, they will give you a data analysis project, and that's what Sean's talking about. Don't insult those people. They're going to give you a data analysis project that looks something similar to this, and it's going to be their data, and it's not going to look good. But you can't say, boy, I'm surprised this bunch can find the building as bad as they are. You can't say, although that's what the data may tell you, you can't say that. That's just like when you have an irate parent come in, what you want to say is the problem here with your child is he's an idiot and it's hereditary. But you can't say that to parents. Well, you can't say to teachers, obviously the problem is y'all aren't very good. And you can't imply or infer that. And so you have to be real careful with that group interview that you're very diplomatic. Even though they've given you this data task and the data's not good, you can't personalize that to them. That may be the case, but you can't do that. As Sean pointed out, that they will never hire you then. They'll never recommend you. You can't make a difference in the lives of children if you don't get the job. And so that data performance task either comes at the end of the first level or accompanies that group interview, because they're going to ask you different questions about that data. And again, a lot of them are teachers, and they're going to be sensitive about those things, and you have to be very diplomatic with that. Okay, so I'll close that. We'll close the group interview. And so now you finally get to the principal interview. Praise the Lord. You're finally here. This is where you get to show out. You get to use all your jargon. You're talking to somebody that understands the lingo that's in the business. But then they're going to throw you those curveball questions again. They're going to ask you that one about strengths and weaknesses. They're definitely going to ask you that one. So let's see the principal interview. Let me move this out of the way. Let me do this right quick. The principal-led interviews, everyone that Sean had is on this list because they picked from this. This is the list that they get to pick from. Now, you won't have all 154 questions, but I'd read through them all. Many of them are the same, but this is basically the list that they will pick those questions from that Sean was talking about. Tell us about your educational background. There you go. Why. They all start this way. You may have this one, you may have some of this in each level, but the principal interview is going to be this. But they're always going to ask you about the principal is always going to ask you about your strengths and weaknesses. What are your best 3 leadership qualities? That's basically they're asking what your leadership style is. What's your philosophy of discipline? All those kinds of things. But they're definitely going to ask you what your strengths and weaknesses are. And remember, your strengths are always dispositional, and your weaknesses are always inexperience. But this is the interview. Now, don't relax and let your guard down because they're going to throw you a curveball question like strengths or weaknesses, or they're going to give you some scenario question like, would you follow this policy? Always, relax enough that you can show them what you know, but don't relax so much that you get caught up in one of those landmine questions. And that's going to be the principal interview round. That's going to get you through that one. All right, so let me check and make sure. Okay, all right, okay, I'm good on that. Let me move this out of the way. Let's see. Absolutely, we're good. All right, so now we'll get to the fourth and final round. You're going to be interviewing now with the person who's going to recommend to the board that you be hired. Now, you all know that the Board of Education hires you, but somebody has to recommend that. That will either be the area superintendent or the superintendent. And so you will interview with them last. They aren't going to talk to you about little things. They're going to talk to you big things like COVID, the pandemic, some big ideas like that. They're going to talk to you about 21st century skills, which now are more critical than ever, that we're having to do virtual. That's 21st century skills. They're going to talk to you about what the students are going to look like. We call those future ready students. And so I have some documents for you that you should spend some time with. Move that out of the way. All right. 6 steps for implementing 21st century skills. You can't just say 21st century skills because the superintendent's going to say, well, how would you go about doing that? This is a wonderful little presentation that leads you through the steps of how you would implement those in your school if they're not already there. And so you need to study that and narrowing the number of skills. You need to focus on technical skills and technology. So make sure you review that one. And then he's going to ask you what it's going to look like. And this is what if you use 21st century skills, this is what the end product, which is what we're concerned with in our business. This is what it will look like. We call those future ready students who have been through 21st century skills or trained in those. And so you make sure you read these as well, because the superintendent's going to talk to you about big picture idea things. They're not going to ask you, how do you schedule a triple lunch shift? They don't care about that. They want to know that you have a certain level of intelligence, vision, that you know what you're doing, you know where we're headed, because whether you realize it or not, they're actually interviewing you for a principal job already. They want to know that a lot of superintendents won't hire somebody as an assistant principal if they can't project 3 to 5 years down the road as principal. And so they want to know that you can see beyond the end of your nose, that you can see the big picture of what we're doing. And so those are the kinds of questions that you're going to get from the superintendent or the area superintendent, is the big picture idea kind of things. So those are the 4 types of interviews. Again, because of COVID right now, Sean had to go through 5. He went through 4 virtual and the 1 face-to-face. You're going to go in some combination of these 4 types of interviews. They may not always be in the order that they've traditionally been in before, but understand each of these different types of interview, there's a different reason for you and a different skill set and something else that you've got to highlight. So know what you're doing when you walk in. People send me emails. I've got an interview Tuesday. Who with? Well, what do you mean? Well, I can't help prepare you unless I know what you're going to walk into. Is it a group interview with parents? Is it community? Is it the superintendent? Or you meet with a principal? Or you meet with a group of teachers? Is it parents? You know, those are the kinds of things that you've got to know what you're walking into. And so the question was, are these resources? Yes, they're all in your class Blackboard shell and interviewing materials. Here's a great one. A person said that they set in how they referred to students as in pejorative terms, these or those or that group, instead of inclusive terms like our students. Yeah, that's one of those things that when you're in a group setting, you got to make sure. And so I think that's those. All right, so now, so here we go so here's in Blackboard. This is what it looks like right here. It's under a section called interviewing materials in your Blackboard class shells. They're all there. And so here's a good point. Thank you, Sean, for this. How will you know exactly who will be interviewing you? And Sean said he wasn't informed when I was contacted for the interview. If you can ask, if you don't, be prepared for all of them. That's part of the trick. That's part of the curveball is you don't know what you're walking into. So you better be prepared for all of them. That's why I said this summer, it's kind of a jumble. You kind of knew in the past, you knew what the process was. And even though they didn't tell you, you could predict what you were walking into. You can't now. And that's part of them trying to catch you unawares and throw you a curveball. Can you think on your feet? I do have cover letters and resumes that I will send out as well with the materials from tonight. I always do those. All right, so now I've got some documents now that are just general things that you need to know about interviewing. All right, this one is getting less and less popular as we are now 10 years into the revisioning of doing evidence artifacts rather than taking an exam. In August of 2010, we stopped the ISLIC administrator's exam in North Carolina. You South Carolina folks still take the praxis, but it's nothing like the ISLIC was. That was an all-day exam that basically was a final exam from every one of your classes you had in your preparation program. We stopped that 10 years ago, and now you have to do your demonstration portfolio. Well, most everybody now understands that. You might have a few administrators, some old ones like me and Dr. Stedman that's still around, and they may ask you about these evidences or artifacts. So forever, I have encouraged you to sit down, take a few minutes, and no more than 2 pages, and summarize what you did in each of your 6 evidences. In the app cell, I ran this PLC. We disaggregated data. We worked on math scores. Something that quick and easy. Most everybody now understands evidence artifacts, but just in case, or they might ask you, can you kind of review for us the things that you did as an intern for your evidences? Because they know what your evidences are to see if those are relevant to their school. I do a quick and dirty 1 to 2 pager that summarizes my 6 evidences. It's always good to have that. That along with your artifact competency folio, some pictures, it's good to have. Those would be what would be called your portfolio. That's one of the 5 things that you always need to have when you're interviewing. So let's look at that right quick. I like the 2-page evidence summary for the evidences, and then you've got a link to, you can publish and share, create a link to your competency folio to see the actual artifacts that this work generated. But that's what in the business we refer to as your portfolio. So if you look, you can see the 5 things you should bring on onto your interview. Your resume, that's why I'm going to give you in a cover letter, I'll give you examples of those. Your references should be on the back page of your resume. A strategic plan, that's if they give you a data project or you've looked at their data. But your portfolio, and that's what we're talking about. Your portfolio would consist of a link to your competency folio and a 2-page or less summary of the 6 evidences that you did. They don't want you to send the 40-page app sale for them to have to read. They want a quick and dirty summary. You will many times be asked for these things or to discuss these things. So I would go ahead and have those ready. So those are the 5 things you need. Now that strategic plan, generally we wouldn't do that until we were interviewing for a principal job. But we would have some knowledge of what their test scores look like. Because they're going to give you they're going to give you a data set somewhere along the way of their school for you to speak to. So you need to know what that looks like before they hand it to you, so you won't just be caught in a surprise. So Samantha said when school sent out intent return forms, I turned around and copy my resume and a cover letter, and later years I was hot seat. There we go. Yeah, Sean said that his was he did his all in one day, or 2 or 3 in one day. Yeah, so you got to be prepared for them all. Walking in for the first one, you need to be prepared for all of them. Again, this summer it's crazy. Yeah, I had one of mine that in Wake County did all of his in one day. So you've got to, and I was on the phone with him earlier this evening. So you've got to know that the process sometimes gets accelerated. You got to know what you're doing and be planned and prepared for all of it. And I think, and Sean Bach made a good point earlier tonight. You need to make sure you reflect on what you did at each level. Write it down. Reflect on what you did. It'll help you in the next one. All right. So, some things you need to know about your interviewer. They want to find the best person. They're busy. Sometimes they can't take you. They've got to take somebody, a transfer or whatever. Don't personalize it. Don't get mad and pout. Send them a nice little email thanking them. I had to remind one of my former students this week. Okay. You know, I told him, he said, well, you know, she interviewed me. I thought we hit it off, but I didn't get it. I said, send her a thank you email. What? I said, you know, principals talk. She's probably got to take somebody else. She might have liked you. You might have been her first pick. But you don't always get your first pick. And that's one of the things that makes you the maddest as principal. You find somebody you really want, but they won't let you have them because they got somebody else. You know, you got to take this transfer. But don't burn the house down just because you're mad. People that are hiring, they're afraid of making the wrong hire. That's why they're trying to make sure that you're the right kind of person first and foremost. The wrong hire is somebody who doesn't possess the emotional intelligence, the soft skills, that shows up sober and clean clothes every day. Don't come in with a dozen bar stamps on their hand and the same clothes they were wearing the day before. That's what we're talking about. Somebody you can get along with. They're trying to figure out how difficult you're going to be to manage, or do you take criticism well, or are you open, are you a good communicator? And they wonder what you're not telling them. And so in your resume, don't have any gaps in your resume. My assumption is if there's a 2-year gap in your resume that you were in the penitentiary, that you were in the big house. That would be my assumption. I had a student one time that said, well, you know, I was a stay-at-home mom those 2 years. Well, then put down I was a stay-at-home mom for 2 years. You know, I'll think the worst if you don't put anything, because we're wondering what you're not telling us. So make sure that you tell people, you know, that you control your own narrative. All right, and so 5 questions never to ask in an interview. When will I be promoted? Many times people aren't quite that direct, but they'll say, well, you know, what's the average length of time that people stay assistant principal in this district? Well, number one, that infers that you're an average candidate to start with. We don't hire average people. So always remember that. So don't ask about when you're going to be promoted, or don't talk to the principal about salary. If you've got issues about salary, national boards, all that stuff, schedule an appointment with HR to talk about that. Principal didn't have anything to do with that. When can you know, am I going to get paid on this? Am I going to get paid on that? Does this school usually get a performance? Don't talk about money. Don't talk about money. Don't come in, you know, what flex time options do you have? So I went and visited my friend Aquanetta when she was principal at Hickory Grove. I had 5 interns with her one summer. It's been several summers back. That was one of the summers that me and Dr. Stedman taught together in Fayetteville, at Fayetteville Christian School. So you know that's been a few years back. And I got there and I saw the picture of a new assistant principal on the board out front. And I went in and I asked Aquanetta how she was doing, because I had trained her, and she said, oh, I've already let her go. And I said, well, it's still hot weather. What do you mean you've already let her go? She said, as soon as she got hired in the job, first thing she told me was that she had to leave at 4 o'clock every day. And she said she knew we were a late start elementary, that we don't even dismiss students till 4:45, and the faculty can't leave till 5:30, because we have. If you've been to Charlotte, on the east side of town, Hickory Grove has one of the 5 traditional early Smart Start programs still left in the country. They have an entire second elementary size school there on the same campus with 1,000 kids in it in Smart Start. Well, they have to let them get started every morning first before the elementary can start. So the elementary doesn't even start till 9:30, and so they went to 4:30 every day. Or 4:45 before they cleared the buses. She wanted to leave at 4 o'clock every day to go pick her children up. And Aquanetta told her, you can go every day. Don't let us bother you. That's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. Don't start out with those kinds of things. Be honest about your time and about those things. And I'll talk about that more in a minute. And don't ask questions that show you hadn't been listening. They just got through telling you the answer, but you didn't hear it. All right. And so now the final document of the evening. My top 10 for job interviews. So here we go. Dress for success. I had a woman came in one time, and I swear she'd taken her grandma's bedspread and made a dress out of it. One of the old pink ones that had the balls around the edge. Now, Dr. Stedman, he's old enough to remember that, because everybody's grandma had one. She'd made some kind of a dress or cover with that thing, smelled like mothballs. My favorite story is I interviewed a fellow for assistant principal, and he didn't wear his good wig. And not only was it not his good wig, it was turned at about 15 degrees to the side, kind of like kids wear their ball cap off to one side. His wig was all, I couldn't figure out how to look at it. He's looking one way, but his hair was the other way. Wear your best wig. If you wear a wig, that's okay, but wear your best wig. Dress for success. Take your 2-page evidence summary and the link to and make sure they've got the link to your portfolio. Research the school and administration. That's why I said know what's on their report card so you can speak to their data. Know the backgrounds of the team there as well. Know what you don't know. That's for those when they ask you that strength and weakness question, you can say, my weakness is inexperience. I understand I've got to learn more about, because EVOS has a principal portal, so does Power School. All these other things, there's a different version that I saw as a teacher. Know those things. you know, that you can speak to instruction in the bottom line, because it's a bottom line business about making a good number go up or a bad number go down. Have a humorous anecdote about how you were able to turn a negative into a positive. Every reference letter I do, and I did 4 today. That's a normal day for me. Every reference letter always wants to know how this candidate turned a negative into a positive. They'll usually ask you that somewhere in your interview. Make sure you have a humorous anecdote about that. Be prepared to discuss hours and responsibilities honestly. Now, obviously, my primary residence is here at Lake Norman, 20 miles north of Charlotte. The traffic here, I've lived here for 26 years. From the time that I was a junior high and high school principal in central office, I've lived here. I have other residences in other places, so I can work on the campus at Gardner Webb after I moved there 5 years ago permanently from the Charlotte and Statesville campus, and we closed those down. But my point in that is I understand traffic. I got to be on the main campus in the morning at 11 o'clock. Now, I can't wait till 9:30 because it's an hour and a half drive because the traffic's going to be bad. It always is. I'll leave here about 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to plan for it to take twice as long as it normally does. When I was a high school principal in the southwestern corner of the county, from where I am all the way at the very top of the county, before 485 was the outer loop was done, I left every morning at 5 o'clock so I could be at work by 5:45. If I waited to 5:30, it was 9 o'clock before I got there. My point is you got to be honest. Just because you get the job, that school won't get any closer to your house. It won't take care of your daycare needs. It won't clear up the traffic. The traffic won't get out of your way just because you got a new job. You got to be honest about those kinds of things. If you've got responsibilities in the evening, or if it's an early start and you know that you got kids at home and no place to take them, those kinds of things factor in. Be honest about those things. Don't wait till you get the job like Allison did and then say, oh, by the way, I got to leave at 4 o'clock every day at a school that even the faculty couldn't leave before, I think it was 5:30. We can't do that. Know that up front. The school won't get any closer, and the traffic won't get any lighter. Again, don't discuss salary, experience, national board pay. Don't discuss those things. That the principal doesn't have anything to do with that. Don't engage in gossip or negative talk. That's what I told the student about. Send the polite email. Principals talk. And so when I texted him back, I just simply said, principals talk to one another. If you're rude or not thankful for the opportunity to interview, that'll get out. So don't engage in gossip or negative talk. And then number 10, which is my absolutely all-time pet peeve, is don't interview for a job you wouldn't take just for the experience. Don't waste my time. Don't waste, if I'm the principal of a school and you're not going to work here, I wouldn't work this place. I've actually had applicants say to me, well, I just came on this interview. I live too far away, or this is not the kind of population I want to work with. I came so I'd know what the questions are to get the practice. So when I go to the good school, I'll know the answer to the interview questions. Well, I'm going to make sure you don't get that opportunity because I'm going to call that principal. So don't waste my time. Time is very precious to school administrators. Don't just come for the experience of interviewing. If you know the school is too far away from you, if you know that it doesn't fit in your family's plans, then don't bother those people. Thank them kindly for the opportunity, but don't go for the experience, because that just really makes people angry and shows a lack of emotional intelligence on your part. All right, so you're going to get your job, and some of you already have, and some of you will. So here's the things this is the epilogue to tonight's session. This is the epilogue. Here are the things that you need to do by the time you have your first faculty meeting this fall. This is your homework assignment now that you've got this job. Know everybody's name and what they do at your school. I don't care if you have to spend nights staying up late, I don't care. Barring this, move around the room and have the staff introduce themselves. Proximity and eye contact is important. Social distancing, notwithstanding. This is for the first faculty meeting. Now you really need to work hard on making sure you know, get the annual from last year and study the pictures. Know people's names. That's important. That may be the most important thing you do in the first month. Get an early win, present something positive to the staff. Don't tackle a problem that's been at that school forever. Do something, get an early win. You got furniture moved out of the cafeteria, or you got a bulletin board put up, or you went to the book room and got a book, or you got a clock. Do something that shows that you are a competent person that can get things done, even if it's something that's simple. Make sure that you get a quick win. Don't tackle the most difficult problem you're ever going to have in that school. Get a quick win. Because if you don't, you're going to fall under the old axiom. So if you establish that you can get things done and that you can get some wins early, even if things don't go well later on, bad things sometimes happen to good people. But if you make a series of mistakes or failures at the beginning, tackle problems too big and too complex, then you're going to fall under, the notion that even if something goes well after that, that you're an incompetent person. That even a blind squirrel finds an acorn every once in a while. They'll discount your wins after that. If you lose a lot at the beginning, even if you start winning later on, they'll discount those as luck, law of average. But if you win and do get things done early on, that establishes that you are that competent person that you told them you were in terms of an emotional, your dispositional behaviors. Give the staff a quick overview of who you are and your professional experience. You got to do it again. The why. The staff wants to know as well. Now you're going to say, just like Sean said, he took 5 different interviews. He had to do that, but the teachers weren't in those interviews. Quick and dirty, but you should be practiced by now since you had to do it in all of your other interviews. You work on that piece and make sure that it's a really quick and dirty who you are and why you're there. Volunteer for something nobody else wants to do. Do as I do, lend a hand. You are servant leaders. Make sure that you do that early on. Present the opening of the school plan and be conversant if the principal will let you. That you're already a part of that you're already a part of the solution rather than the part of the problem. See, now my axiom is this: when I hire a new AP, you're only new till lunchtime the first day. After that, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. You need to, I'm talking about the first day you show up. I'm not talking about first day of school. I'm talking about the first day you show up. You only knew that morning. We'll be nice to you for about 2 hours, maybe 3. After that, you better strap it on. Let's go. Let's saddle up and ride. You're part of the solution now, or you're not. You can't be, it's after Christmas and your excuse is, well, I'm new here. No. But and as I've had to say to some, I can solve that problem here quickly too. You will no longer be new here. You just won't be here. And so you need to make sure you understand. If you can present that opening of the school plan, that quick and dirty, what we're going to do today kind of thing that kicks off that all day, especially now we're probably doing virtually the all day staff development that you do, the opening of the school faculty meeting. If you can kind of kick it off with the outline for the day, introduce yourself and kind of say, here's what we're going to do. That is a very overt message that I'm here with you now. So what you would ask the principal is, when I give my quick and dirty about, who I am and why I'm here, if you let me do a quick about, this is what we're going to do today. We're going to do this and take a break, and then this break, have lunch, and we're going to do this. If you'll let me just kind of outline that, all of a sudden I'm projected as being, a part of this place already. That's a really quick, and it's a trick, but it's a really quick way for you to be identified as part of the leadership in your very first job, because that's going to be the biggest hurdle for you to get over is how do people see me as an administrator now? That's one of those quick tricks. That's a real quick shortcut to looking like a leader. Smile and laugh at the appropriate times. You'd be surprised how many people don't do that. They laugh at the inappropriate time or don't smile at the appropriate. Shows that you are a human or that you have a sense of humor. Ask questions and take notes. Again, have a pad nearby. I required my APs. I actually gave it to them. See, I have mine right here, but I actually required my APs to carry a note in their pocket. And they said, well, I said, well, number one, write down what your priority list is for what you're going to do every day. Always write it down. Right here's mine for the day. See it. My priority list. Make sure you write down what your priority list is today, what you want to get to. But more importantly, when somebody comes and says, can you get me this or that or the other? Don't depend on yourself as busy as you are to remember that. Write it down so that you can write down all the requests that people have of you. And you can review that. And then you got it written down. You don't have to put the pressure of remembering everything when things are always jumping off. You know how it is in the school business. So that pad, have a idea. These are the things that I want to get done today. But these are the things that people have asked me as well, because they're important. My job is to facilitate them as a servant leader. Walk around the building before that first faculty meeting if you get to go back into the buildings this fall, and take notes about what you see, and then point out, specifically what you saw, and be positive about things you've seen. Be specific. Don't just say, I like the way Miss Smith did her classroom. What did you like about her classroom? That means a lot to people. Don't complain or seem worried about or ready for the opening of school, especially now in the COVID era. Guess what? The kids will show up and school will open one way or the other, whether it's online or in face-to-face. They'll come. They'll be there. So there's no need to worry about it. That just makes you, that people are worried when their leaders are worried. You don't want to ever seem worried. You got to be like a duck. On the surface, you got to be calm. You can be paddling like hell underneath, but you got to be calm on the surface. And then my all-time pet peeve for people in the role: don't mention how busy you are or how hard you're working. That's the expectation. That's why you went through all this time and expense and trouble to get planned and prepared to be a school administrator. Don't complain about how busy you are. We expect you to be busy because you're working for not only the students, but the faculty now as well. That's your job. You're working with adults for the benefit of students. And so your job is, by nature, it is busy. It is involved. But that's what you signed up for. It's a very complex task, but that's what you desire to do. Don't complain about it or tell everybody how hard you're working. That's the expectation. Again, make it look smooth. Just like, I'll use myself as a bad example. You don't need to know what I have to do to have class every night, how long I prepared today for this and wrote out my script and all those things. You don't need to know any of that. I'm supposed to make it look seamless. The only thing is, sometimes my notes, you can see them in my glasses because of the glare, but you're not supposed to know how hard I work at this. I'm supposed to make it look like I just rolled out of bed and walked in here and turned the computer on. That's what you've got to do as an administrator. People have confidence. If you're that person whose tail's always on fire and everything's always drama and everything is a crisis all the time, people can't live in that. They need some confidence and some security. They need to not worry about you. That you can't be henny penny, the sky's falling all the time. People will not follow you, because the first tenet of leadership is followership. If there's nobody, if there's nobody listening to you or following you, you're just a nitwit out in the wilderness talking to yourself. So you can't tell everybody how hard you're working. you've got to keep that part to yourself, and people will be more likely to follow you if that's the case. Let me catch the questions here. We've got anything else? If so the question was, did 602 receive this by accident? No, we invited everybody except for the 601s, because again, the world is now on its ear. We've got people that are in the first and second classes are interviewing for jobs already. I have one who's in just second semester that's already interviewed for a job. Folks are looking, especially in the more rural, they're looking for people who have the technology skills, who can use Zoom and platforms. And they're willing to take people who are early on in the programs just to get those people in their pipeline. A lot of rural districts, I mean, a lot of the administrators don't, they can use email and Microsoft Word, but beyond that, understanding how to integrate the learning platform with Zoom, we all do it because we've done it. But think about if you hadn't been in this program and you were, say you were an old person like me still in the business, what are the chances that you would know any of this stuff? And so I've had a couple of people, we've had a couple of people get in touch with us. Do we have anybody in the pipeline even? Anybody that's even in the pipeline that's been through 601 and has learned to do this? Can you put us on some people? They may not hire them as administrators, but they're going to hire them as something to try to help with virtual education this fall. And so the question comes up, in our DRF, do we need to complete the end of program completer survey? If you would, please. It's a quick and dirty. It's just click a few buttons. It's about a 30-second one. I collect that data. I'm doing a convergent design mixed methodology case study where I send out the one for 605 where you answer the open-ended. I'm also doing one where it's a quantitative where you just click the survey, and I'll do a convergent design on that. That's neither here nor there. We're required, every school of education that is a subcontractor, Department of Public Instruction, is required to do a 5-year case study. I'm doing the one for Gardner Webb. How smart am I? You've already figured that out, that I volunteered to do that. But anyway, that's another story for another day. And so now, last thing. I've got a question, and thank you for reminding me of this one. Let me stop my share. Every district is different in terms of the application process. Make sure you follow that process in your district. Some districts, it's okay to send resumes to principals. Others, it's not. When I worked in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, Dr. Crawford and I worked in Charlotte-Mecklenburg together. He's a lot younger than me, but it was a while back. He's in Guilford now. Now, when we were in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, they would not allow principals to take resumes. He and I were principals there together. They wouldn't let us. And if they found out we contacted one of them, they would not let them in the process. They had their own process that we had to go through. And of course, we had analysts there that we couldn't hire anybody that didn't come through our analyst, whether it was AP or teachers, didn't matter. And so you kind of knocked yourself out of a job there if you sent the resumes out to principals. Now, other districts, principals contact them. If you'll remember, one of our activities in discussion board in 603 was to find out what the hiring process is in your district. For that reason, that's why I had you do that, so that you would know, all right, what's the first step? If they advertise it online, they'll usually tell you what to do next. Whatever they tell you to do next, that's what I'd do next. I would not try to jump the line or short circuit. If they say send it to this person in HR, that's who I'd send it to. Instead of saying, well, I know that principal over there, I'll jump in front of the line and everybody else, they'll send theirs to HR and I'll send mine to the principal. No, don't do that. Make sure you understand what the process is in your district or the district that you're applying for. Make sure you understand that. You can knock yourself out before you ever get started. Dr. Crawford, again, he's in a very large district. Dr. Crawford, what's the process in Guilford now?
So it's very similar, and I think it's because Charlotte started it years ago with administrative jobs. I know we do it. Next door in Winston does it. They do the administrative pool. So you've got to go through that pool process first, even to get the opportunity to sit for interviews for open schools.
That is correct. Charlotte Mecklenburg was the first school to start the applicant pool process. They usually use virtual interviews in that. You may not ever get to interview with a person if you don't get through the applicant pool process, and that's our first level. That's what I talked the most about tonight. And the reason why, because if you don't get through that first level, that applicant pool interview, you don't get to go out and interview. You don't make the cut to go out and interview and actually interview then. That's the most important one. And a lot of the big districts, that's what we're doing. Dr. Hamilton's on tonight. She's in a medium-sized district down at New Hanover. Dr. Hamilton, are you with us?
I'm here.
The process for prospective administrative candidates in New Hanover.
To complete the online application first, look at who it says that you want to, it'll tell you who the supervisor is or the contact person is. So you would do the online application and then you would send your letter of interest and resume to the person that's listed on the online application.
Okay. And they tell you there. All right.
Correct.
I see Dr. Todd, administrator up in the Triad area, and she keeps up with those. Guilford and some of the ones east of there. Dr. Todd, you have anything, your contacts up that way?
I think the biggest thing is in a smaller school system, you're not going to have the large pools, especially if you're in a rural area, because there's not that many people that want to come to your schools. So you're looking for the best candidate that will fit in these rural schools. And often it's the fit of the person with the school more so than what you can do, so that how you come across is really, really important. But every county probably uses the state application and pulls from there. But you need to just sort of research where you want to work and then go from there. But it is much different in a smaller school system because
right.
you don't. Your interviews might be all in one day like Sean's were, because you might go to a group interview and then you might do a principal interview and just go from one to the other.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Todd. Sean Perry, would you like to, congratulations. You want to give us a few words of wisdom?
Sure. It's getting dark in here. Hang on, let me turn the light on. Lost the natural light from outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience. I think the biggest thing is getting comfortable with your strengths, like you were talking about earlier, and being confident. I think if you stammer around when you're talking, those moments of silence can get really, really awkward if you're in a group of 10 or 12 people. And a lot of it goes back to what Dr. Todd said. You know, we all have the credentials, we all have merit. So there's got to be some difference, that there's jobs that I'm going to fit better than maybe somebody else will, even though we have the same credentials or the same work ethic or whatever. So there's some intangible things about our backgrounds, our upbringings, and our personal experiences that will play a part in those jobs that you apply for.
Yes. Thank you, Sean. Again, they've got to get to know you up front. That's dispositional, that emotional intelligence stuff that we talked about early on. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to talk about people in the chat were talking about the money. Money was never brought up, and that was actually the very last thing that was brought up from the superintendent when I interviewed with him. That was his final statement. He said, "I'll get you a compensation packet so you can look it over prior to signing the contract."
Exactly. The principal has nobody until you get to they won't talk to you about money until you get to the superintendent.
No.
So if you want to know up front, you can make an inquiry to HR if you've got a question, but that should not be a part of the interview process. If it is, you won't get the job. I'll tell you now, because they'll be concerned that you're only about this job in order to get the money.
Dr. Lamb, may I say one thing about
Yes,
Sean?
I was coming to you next.
Well,
Dr.
Sean I visited him when he first started the program. I was his CC1. And when I visited the school, Sean and I had, just a very, very special connection from the very beginning and conversation. And Sean will remember our conversation. And I made a prediction that day that big things were going to happen to him very soon, and they have, and I'm very proud of Sean.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. That's great.
Dr. Lamb, if I could add one point.
Yes.
I certainly don't want anyone to be taken back when they go in for those interviews. Sometimes there is a writing component.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like when you get there for your interview, it may follow your interview, or it could be something that precedes your interview. Nothing real lengthy. Sometimes it's an introductory kind of activity, like the first day, opening of school kind of information. But just don't let that, set you and take you off guard if there is a writing component.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Talent. Dr. Talent is up in the Catawba area. Again, smaller districts up there. Again, kind of a throwback at time. My assumption, and I guess maybe I shouldn't assume this, is since you've now all been through a writing intensive program through the portfolio system, that you would you'd almost welcome something as easy as writing, because you've all been through a writing intensive program. There was a time when, especially like when I first started out in Rutherford County, and then when I went to another rural county in the west, Burke County, that was simply part of it, because, there was people applied for a job back then that actually couldn't read or write. And so that was, one of the things that had you read a little bit to them and write. I hate to say that, but it's pretty much the truth. You folks have come through a writing intensive program. You shouldn't have that. But Dr. Talent is right. A lot of the small districts still do that. Don't get thrown by that if you go out to one of those rural areas and they give you a writing sample. It's like, what do you mean? I just came through a writing, that was like doing 3 national boards. You understand that every 2 evidences you've done is like doing a national board, and you've done 3. But don't be insulted if they ask you to do a writing sample, because I'll guarantee you she's right. There's plenty of them that'll still do it, the smaller districts. So don't be upset or angry if they do that. Always do things with good humor. I'm looking. I saw Laura Shipman earlier. Laura, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here. Wait a minute, I gotta turn the light on too. It's gotten dark.
Okay. Now Laura is up in Haywood County.
Yes.
And she
West
works
of
for the
Asheville.
charter school.
Yes.
And so charter schools, I wanted to call on Laura tonight. I didn't tell her this, but I know she's always gracious with her time. Charter schools may be a little bit different in terms of the process, how it works, but it's the same. They're looking for the same things. They just do it a little bit different. Laura, if you want to speak to your company that you work with.
So the charter school that I work for, we actually advertise the position on Teacher Match, and on there it gives a job description. You apply. You can also send your resume and a cover letter to the head of school. and he will look at it as well. And I know that there's several charter schools in this area that actually use Teacher Match, and they go through that same process. It's a little bit different. We're much smaller, you know, and up here where we're at, there's not a whole lot of charter schools, but there's always opportunities for anybody who wants to, you know, come into a charter school, learn how it works, learn some different leadership skills than what a traditional LEA will give you, for sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Laura. Dr. Sanders is with us tonight. She's one of our full-time on campus. I'm sure many of you have had her for curriculum. Dr. Sanders has worked in different, she has different experiences across a different perspective maybe than some of the rest of us. Dr. Sanders, if you have anything you'd like to close with tonight?
I don't see myself. I was trying to see myself
There you
so I
are.
could model for the students. Dr. Lamb said so very politely that Dr. Sanders followed her husband around the country.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been in almost every state. But one thing that I will tell you that most of the programs are going to ask for the exact same thing. When you go in, just go in like Sean, who I am so proud of. Sean had me. And Laura just finished talking. I'm just so proud tonight. But they're going to ask similar questions. It's just now that you go in not knowing whether or not you're going to have one person interviewing you or a team. So just go in and relax and speak to what you know. I believe that all of the professors here have prepared you. I have had an opportunity to listen to some great responses and actually read some great questions on the board. So I think you're going to be fine. Just note that you need to hire me when I am 75 years old and still looking for something to do, and no bus duty.
No bus duty. Thank you. As I said, Dr. Sanders, I've only ever worked in North Carolina. I worked in 4 districts. Most of us have worked in North or South. As I said, Dr. Sanders has a different experience. She's worked a lot of different places that the rest of us have not worked. But this works pretty much everywhere. You're going to get the same kind of things, and that's kind of what I wanted her to relate to you is there's no shortcut to getting a job. You've got to work hard, whether it's a private school, whether it's a charter school. They're looking for the same things. And the process may differ, but they're all looking for the same thing, the best person they can find to do the best job with their faculty, because you now work for the faculty, and for their students. You know, that's what they're looking for. Now, the last thing, and I am so glad that let me make sure that I go back and look at this, because I am so glad that I was asked this about as we go out the door here. Social media. Oh my goodness. And so the question is how often does everybody look at, does the school district look at your social media account if you list it? You do realize that the big districts have people that, even if you don't list it, that look for you on social media. I used to supervise. That was one of the people that I had to supervise, so I know. If you have a social media presence, they will find it. Whether you list it or not, most districts will find that, especially the bigger ones. Please make sure that you don't follow people that you shouldn't or that are controversial, or if you have some political bent, you know, don't be surprised if that hurts you looking for a job. You know, I know there's freedom of speech, but you know, there's also, you have the freedom to be dumb. And so if you do those things and you knock yourself out of a job, then you know, that's up to you. But I would be very aware of social media, and what I posted or what I followed or those kinds of things, because you don't want to have to be trying to explain that in an interview. I can tell you that will not go well. All right, so the question for Chad is, yeah, they're going to look at your social media. If you list it, they'll look. Even if you don't list it, they're going to pay somebody to look in the background check. because we have too many people. We're too afraid. Kind of the close for me tonight, and this goes back to what Laura said. There's companies out there that scrape resumes. That's what it's called. I've found this out fairly recently. Places like Indeed, that when you post, they scrape and they automatically apply for jobs. You probably need to, that speaks to that, don't apply for jobs you wouldn't take. Be careful about that. If you've signed up for some of these job search companies like Indeed, and I'm using them, I know there are others, select the option that you have to submit the application. Don't select the option where it does it automatically. Make sure that I understand that you have that option to do one of those. It's okay to use Indeed because a lot of privates and charters use them. They use Teacher Match and others. But these scraping companies, when they see keywords in job announcements, they automatically send your resume. Don't do that for the school business. That's a really bad idea for the school business. So if you're involved with those, or if you want to be involved with charters and privates that use Indeed and Teacher Match, Dr. Todd was talking about the state application system. It's separate than that, but if you're using one of these privates, make sure that they send you the announcement and you choose whether to send the resume or not. All right, did I miss anybody that any of our faculty that needs, I'm so appreciative of our faculty being with us tonight. I'm appreciative that all of you came out. I'm so proud that all of you who have gotten jobs, and I know will get jobs, Keith and some of the others, and I know some of you are interviewing now. As I said, I did 4. The Teacher Match, it is worth the time, as Dr. Crawford pointed out, to complete the NC Teacher Match application. That's a good thing to do. I did 4 references today for APs. One of them was the standard North Carolina one. A couple were the Teacher Match. One was Richland, South Carolina. Columbia, they have their own. If you need a letter, let me know. If they need a letter, I'll be glad to send the reference letter. Most of them want an electronic one first. So make sure you send us those and we'll be glad to do them. Dr. Whitaker, I see you there. Thank you for joining us tonight as well. If there's any other faculty, if I didn't see you, thank you. So I appreciate your time. Let me see. Did I get us out in an hour and a half tonight? I can't see the time. I don't have my watch on. Let me see. I got it right here. I went a few minutes over, but we talked at the end. Thank you all for your time tonight. I appreciate it. I'll see you again soon. Thank you. And thank you for choosing Gardner Webb. Prayers for all. Thank you.
Bye, Dr. Lamb. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.